We're back here, Philly's #1 college radio station, WHIP. Last Friday, DeSean Jackson was cut by the Philadelphia Eagles, and it didn't take too long for him to find a new home, as late last night, the Washington Redskins picked him up on a 3-year deal. So let's go out to the hotline right now and welcome in former NFL MVP, now an analyst with CBS, and hosts a talk show on Sirius, and that's Rich Gannon. Rich, it's Zach Gelb here in Philly. How are you?
Zach, I'm doing really good. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for coming on, and it's great to hear your voice. And DeSean Jackson back on Friday was released. You have the article that came out by NJ.com with the gang affiliations. You also asked for a new contract after the Saints game to the media. In your opinion, why was DeSean Jackson released by the Eagles?
Well, I really think that it wasn't from a production standpoint, because you look at the numbers last year, the guy had 82 catches, he had a really career year with 1,300 yards, 9 touchdowns, goes to a Pro Bowl. I think more than anything, it was just, I think the organization got tired of his antics. I think it's a guy that, was typically, had some issues in terms of being on time for practice and meetings and doing the little things it takes. I think anytime you come to a new program, and like Chip Kelly did coming from college, I think you want to establish a program. I think you want to change the culture and the environment. And I think you want to do things the right way. I think they tried to do that in Philadelphia. But, DeSean didn't necessarily buy in. And I think, when you look at it at the end of the day, you say, well, are the Eagles better because of this? Well, from a production standpoint, you'd say no, because, you've got a guy like Jeremy Maclin's coming off of a knee injury. He's coming back. Riley Cooper was the most productive player down in the red zone. But you lose your deep play threat. You lose the guy that was arguably your most productive receiver the last couple of seasons. And so, but in the long haul, maybe they did get better, because, when you look at a player like that, is not happy. He's a guy that, has been a bit of a problem child. It doesn't help the rest of the team. You got young receivers watching that. You got a young quarterback that you continue to develop with Nick Foles. I think it was a decision that Chip Kelly felt was important to make in order for this team to get where they ultimately want to go, and that's to win a championship.
Well, Rich, it was clear a strong message has been sent to the other players in the locker room that it's Chip Kelly's way or the highway with the release of DeSean Jackson, who, like you mentioned, put up a lot of numbers on the production side last year. And earlier on in the offseason, I was giving Chip Kelly words of extolment for going out there and bringing back the safety blanket pieces to Nick Foles when you're trying to develop a young quarterback. He brought back Riley Cooper, re-signed Jason Kelce and Peters, and now he goes out there and he takes away one of the most reliable targets for Nick Foles. So losing DeSean Jackson, how does that affect the development of one Nick Foles?
Well, look, if you're Nick Foles, I guess, initially you can't be real happy about it, because, you lose a guy that, is capable of scoring anytime he gets a ball in his hands. I mean, you can throw him a 6-yard hitch, you can make a guy miss and go 80 yards. So you lose that. But on the flip side of it, you say to yourself, are we a better team as a result of it? Is the communication going to be better? Are we a group that's completely bought in? Can we set this distraction aside and now move on? And when you look at it, and certainly Darren Sproles, I think it's a great addition to what they already have. And with DeSean Jackson, I wouldn't be surprised to see some formations with both of those players on the field at the same time. Darren Sproles can be a great asset to a guy like Nick Foles in the passing, and the guy that over 70 catches last year for the Saints. But he's not a wide receiver, and so. I think this is a draft that's deep in talent at the wide receiver position. So I look for the Eagles to do something there. You still have the ability to pick up a better player at some point, whether it's free agency or a player that gets released at some point. But look, it's time for some young players to grow up a little bit in this offense. Not just Jeremy Maclin and Riley Cooper, who will probably be the starters, but some other guys on that roster who now get the opportunity to at least compete for that third spot.
We're spending a few minutes with former NFL MVP, now working with CBS and Sirius, and that's Rich Gannon. And Rich, DeSean Jackson goes to the Washington Redskins. Do you believe that's a good fit for number 10?
I believe it is, and here's why. They had a real need at that position opposite Pierre Garçon. Pierre Garçon led the league last year, led the Redskins, set a franchise record, I think it was 113 catches, but opposite Pierre Garçon, they had some issues. You got Leonard Hankerson, who was coming off of a knee injury last year. Santana Moss, his production has gone down. He's going to be 35 years old. They picked up Andre Roberts in free agency. He's more of a slot receiver. So I think they really were looking for a guy that could really stretch the field and complement Pierre Garçon, and now they've got it. in DeSean Jackson. And I think, you've got players that really reached out, kind of stuck their neck out for him a little bit. RG3 had reached out to him. We know that other players like Pierre Garçon, particularly D'Angelo Hall, were kind of in the recruiting mode, if you will. And so I think that the Redskins did their research on him. I think they realized that, hopefully he's humbled by what happened in Philadelphia. I think it was kind of an eye-opener for a guy like DeSean Jackson. Felt maybe he would never be released. He finished his career as a Philadelphia Eagle. But it just goes to show you that, look, teams are willing to move on and cut bait with a guy that is being paid a lot of money, who's quite frankly not engaged. And I think that was the situation with DeSean in Philadelphia.
When you see a player like an RG3 and you're trying to develop a young quarterback, they add a weapon in DeSean Jackson. That's definitely going to help him. But if they want to get back to winning the NFC East, they have to improve this offensive line and keep RG3 healthy up in the pocket. I know it's tough when he leaves that pocket, and that's the big risk with the mobile quarterback. They don't have a first-round pick this year, but would you have to see the Redskins picking up an O-lineman in the draft?
Oh, I think it's certainly an area of need. I mean, you look at the offensive line, left tackle Trent Williams, and I think, Will Montgomery, who, is a guy that they've moved on from. But, Trent Williams, is a solid player. But, on the other side of it, they struggled. I mean, Columbus, Chester, Lichtensteiger, they all struggled last year. And so that's an area where I think is going to be a focus in the draft, along with the secondary, and also trying to replace a guy like London Fletcher. I don't know that there's a lot of free agents that can come in and kind of fill that void. They picked up, a couple guys in Akeem Jordan and Dale Sharpton. But to me, offensive line, secondary, and linebacker have to be priorities for the Washington Redskins.
Last year, the Eagles were one of the surprise teams in the NFL, winning the NFC East. The Giants had a down year, so did the Redskins. The Cowboys weren't able to cap it off at the end of the year as they were missing Tony Romo. If you had to give one team in the NFC East the edge to compete here with the Eagles in 2014, I know there's still a lot to go in the draft. Which team would that be?
Probably the team we just talked about, the Redskins, because they're a year removed from being a 10-6 team. I think that the idea that the quarterback got off to a really slow start, really no surprise. You think about it, he didn't participate in the off-season program, really didn't do anything in training camp, and then they threw him out there. They got off to an ugly start to go 1-4, and then I think he lost his confidence. I think the team lost confidence in him. They had some injuries, didn't play as well defensively. But, you look at Jay Gruden, I think he's an innovative guy. I think he's going to do a great job. He's had a lot of success with young quarterbacks. Had a lot of success with Andy Dalton his first 3 years in the league in Cincinnati. He's a very good play caller. I think it's going to help RG3, and I think it's going to help his offense. And in return, it's going to help a defense that I think is going to take some time to develop under Jim Haslett.
A few more with Rich Gannon before we let him run. Also getting back to the Eagles, we saw the Pats do this a few years ago before the whole Hernandez situation. They played a lot of two tight end sets. Can you see the Eagles possibly going out there and throwing a lot of balls to Ertz and Selleck and going more of those two tight end formation with the departure of DeSean Jackson?
Well, I think so. I mean, I think if you look at Zach Ertz, I think his role in the offense grew with every game, and I think it figures to grow even more next season. I think 25 of his 36 receptions went for first downs. I think he had 4 touchdown catches. He's got the size and the speed and the route running ability that you like. So now you talk about creating mismatches, with linebackers and safety types. And, I think Selleck's role in the offense changed a little bit. I think he became more of a blocker, less a receiver, though he did have 6 touchdown catches. But I think you got 2 tight ends that are very capable. And I think that, you're going to look at, you'll probably see more 2 tight end sets. Because of the flexibility that they have with those 2 players.
I want to get your take on the big 3 quarterbacks in the draft. I got a chance to see both Bortles and Bridgewater here in Philadelphia going up against the Temple Owls, and I got to cover Johnny Manziel the last 2 years at the Heisman Award. If you were an NFL GM, though, and you had to make a selection on the quarterback, out of those 3, which quarterback do you like best?
Well, I think they all have something that concerns me, and I think that this is a year where you look at, I think the Raiders are a good example. They're picking at 5, and they decided to go with Matt Schaub. I think it was a smart move because I don't think any of these quarterbacks are ready to go in and play right away, particularly with a bad team. And a lot of the teams that we know that need quarterbacks are picking early in this draft. You look at a team like Houston at 1, Jacksonville at 3, Cleveland at 4, Oakland at 5, and even Minnesota at 8. So I thought it was a good decision on their part. The guy that, if you put a gun to my head, I had to pick somebody, it would probably be Johnny Manziel. There's a lot to like in this kid's game. Now, I know that the people are concerned a little bit about, the immaturity and some of the string of off-the-field issues that I think were a concern. Can he be the face of an NFL franchise? I look at the eyeball test. I look at a kid that went out there and he played at a very high level, brought his team from behind, played his best football in some of the biggest games. He reminds me a little bit of Jeff Garcia, played in San Francisco all those years, and even in Philadelphia. He doesn't maybe have the ideal size, but he's got unique maneuverability, sees the field well, very competitive. I think he's got underrated arm talent. And I think he's a guy that if he's in the right system, with a disciplined play caller and a quarterback coach that goes stay on him, because his feet can get him in trouble at times, I think he's got a chance to have a pretty productive career.
He's a competitor and he's clutch, and I was really impressed with him getting a chance to talk to him at the last 2 years of the Heisman. But I also have to imagine, I don't put a lot of stock in pro days, but he really sent a strong message going out there and put on those helmet and those shoulder pads, because a lot of quarterbacks don't do that in their pro days.
No, it was impressive. I mean, it was quite the spectacle. I mean, you've got the helmet, the shoulder pads, you've got some music going, you've got the media coverage, you've got a former president, his wife, their dog there. I mean, it was something special now. And I thought he threw the ball really well. I thought he competed. There's a lot of pressure on these guys. I just talked to Kurt Warner a few minutes ago about how this whole thing has changed in the last 5-10 years, where these pro days it's a lot of pressure on these young guys to go out there and really cut it loose and throw the ball well. And I thought he handled himself pretty well despite the circumstances.
Final one here with Rich Gannon. I agree with you. I think Manziel's the best out of these three quarterbacks, and it puts the Houston Texans in an interesting predicament. Do you go defense and take Clowney and pair him up with the J.J. Watt, or do you go out there and take the quarterback? Houston Texans, number one pick. Where are you leaning towards with them?
I'd be really surprised if they don't take Clowney. I just got a chance to watch his workout. I thought he was terrific. I don't see how you can pull the trigger with the first overall pick and take a quarterback. It's not just whether the quarterback is ready, it's whether or not the team, a young team, is ready for a quarterback like that. Do you have a great offensive line? Do you got a productive running game and defense that can hold up? And you look at the situation in Houston, they've got a couple of young quarterbacks, Case Keenum, P.J. Yates, they signed Ryan Fitzpatrick. You got to say to yourself, is Manziel or one of the other guys that much better than what we already have, or do we continue to kind of look at other avenues in terms of that position? I think it's a mistake to draft a guy because you have to get one. I think the Texans will take a quarterback, but I don't think it's going to be in the first round.
Well, Rich, it was great to see you in New York for the Super Bowl. We appreciate a few minutes today. Thanks so much, and let's have you on again real soon.
All right, brother. Sounds good. Have a great day.